In our first lesson, we talked about how we could create geometry inside of GraphPad, but by far the most important aspect is the ability to create dimensions. So with our dimension tool, we can actually just touch an item and it'll create the appropriate dimension. So for example, if we want an angle dimension, we touch the corner of two lines and we'll get an angle. And you can see that it's very easy to manipulate these to put them in the right location. With 3.5, we can also change the font size. So we can actually just take the active dimension and increase the size, change the color. So when working with Google Maps, we can change it to a nice yellow or a white. Move that back. But we can also now change the text very easily as well. So say for example you have a dimension which is too precise to actually do by drawing and by manipulating the endpoints of a line. What we can also do is just type it in. And in this case, we're going to type in just the word test so we can actually see how it works. Now, once a dimension has been edited, it will no longer update. So the rest of the drawing will update accordingly, but we see that test stays test, whereas this angle which is being changed is automatically updated. One area we haven't covered yet is working with arcs. So when we have two lines that are connected, we touch the corner, it's going to create an arc, and we can actually see the radius of the arc. We can actually manipulate it by either touching it and changing it. Oops, way too much. So say for example we want it to be 3 feet. If we touch somewhere away from the screen, we can actually create a circle, and now we can manipulate the endpoints of the circle, right? So we can actually move these around. In order to create a circle, it does have to start at 0 and end at 360. If we go into points mode and we touch an arc, it's going to create a point, and it's actually going to separate that arc. So where does it create that point when we touch it? It's going to create it based upon the snap. So if we set the snap to 30 degrees and we get a point and we touch it, the arc, it's going to create it at the nearest increment of 30 degrees. So we can then take that in arcs mode, take that segment and manipulate it. So in this case, we can change its radius. Because a circle is anything that starts at 0 and ends at 360, it's very easy to then create circles. Now, notice the end is at 0. We don't want that. We want the start to be at 0. So we're actually going to start at 0 and end at 360. To create one circle, create another circle, and then we can create a third circle. And again, they both have to start and end at 360. We can create a dimension on an arc by either in a circle just touching it, and we'll automatically create the various dimensions. If it's close, say for example we've got an angle dimension that would pop up, we can switch it over to radius only, in which case we just touch it. And of course these move nicely around the radius, so we can actually line things up however we want. The one thing about arcs is we can't move them directly, so you can't grab the center and actually move it. What you can do, however, is you can actually create a selection area and then you can move it wherever you need it to be. It will line up. The center of the circle is a point, and so it will adjust based upon snaps as well. In order to edit text and create and edit text within GraphPad, we go to the text mode, so we can just switch over to that mode. Then we draw the area that we want the text to appear in, and then start typing away. Okay, so we can have returns in this. This is going to be the block that it's going to appear. We can actually change the alignment. We can change the font. So once it's selected, we'll see that it's highlighting the gray area. We can actually check, go for a different font. We can resize the area that it's going to be presented in, and we can also go in and change the font. And of course, color, right? So we can actually see that we can change the color associated with text. Text should be plotted last, and therefore it's going to appear on top of everything else. And text can appear in a group and can be placed into the library. So say for example we had some simple block that we wanted. I'm going to do this as an example. Let's go ahead and change the text font so it's a little bit smaller and fits inside our little box. Now what we can do is in points mode, go and select that area. The image that shows up on the palette is what we've actually selected. It turns this whole area into a PNG. Press and hold, we get our group menu. We either save it as an image, in which case it can't be manipulated, or we can save it as an object. We'll just go ahead and get a name for this. Sorry, text. Save. And now it's in our palette. So if we grab it in our palette, we can drop it in. We can go into text mode and we can now edit our text. And to edit the text, select it, which you'll see the gray area that the text is presented in, and then just press and hold inside that area. Now you can actually change the text, resize it, reorient it, whatever you like. So one of the questions I've been asked a lot and actually anticipated was, how do I get an image of a satellite image, Google Maps image or Apple's satellite images? How do I get that into GraphPad? So most of the functionality is actually within Apple itself. So if you just go over to your mapping tool, in this case I've got the roof of a building, get an image that we're happy with, and then by pressing the main button and then the on-off switch in the upper right hand corner, you can take a screen dump. Okay, that actually dumps this image directly into the camera roll. So if we go back into GraphPad, we now can see that that image is available, and I've actually done that a couple of times now. So when we have a very large image, we want to keep the performance very good when we're drawing. And GraphPad handles this by having multiple pages and then creating a clear page on top of it. It's very much like vellum. You just laid a sheet of vellum on top of a drawing or an image. So in order to create that clear drawing, we've created a clear page, and we've made it so that the page is going to zoom simultaneously. So we say zoom this page only and turn that off. Okay. So this page is clear. When we open another one, we notice this is now a transparent layer. So we've got a couple of those. Right. So now we can change this so we kind of get rid of, change it to being opaque, turn the grid off, and leave it so it zooms simultaneously with the front page. If we zoom now, and we'll clear everything off of this, this now shows the outline of the page. If we go and grab our image and drop it in, okay, so go to points mode, and we can see we've got center point. We can actually move it with the selection area as well, okay, and we can actually trim this, we can rotate it. What we might want to do is rotate it using the angle snap as being off. We grab the second part of the handle, and we can rotate it. There we go. Sorry, it's kind of hard for me to see in this light. Now, with an image, if we create a selection area, we can then trim the image. So we create the area that we're interested in, press and hold, and now we'll notice that we've got clip inside of this. So if we clip it, now we just have the part of the image that we're interested in, and we can resize it accordingly. We also, in order to fine-tune this, we can actually press on the center handle, and we now have the ability to rotate the image a half a degree, either plus or minus. Now what we might want to do is go to line mode. Let's see, actually, go to points, turn our angle degree to 45, go to lines, and we'll change it so we have a yellow line, and we'll just create a vertical line that we can gauge things by and see how close we are. So you can see that there's a little bit of a gap there. So if we go back to points and bring up our tool, and now if we rotate it plus 5 degrees, and now close that, we see it's almost perfectly aligned. We can now go back and lay our other line on top of this. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and delete this line just to get it out of the way. Look at it. Great. We're going to just move it aside. And we'll go to pan and zoom so we don't see any extra stuff on there. And now we can actually start tracing. And what we'll notice is that we'll change this to yellow as well. As we draw, it's going to be a lot faster. So you can see we can actually draw very quickly. So we have no performance degradation. We can actually map out the outline of the roof. Now we haven't really messed with scale. We'll notice this is set to 1 foot. So as long as we're just drawing, we can go ahead and change the scale. It's not going to have any effect. So we can just go over here. Go to our scale tool. This is probably about 80. No, actually, gosh, that's probably about 200 feet. So you might want to change that to 200. The slider, 100 feet. So probably just kind of guess that's kind of close to it, right? We can drop a dimension on, and we're going to want to change, drop that dimension on, change that to it's a little bit bigger so we can see it, and then change it so it's yellow. So let's change it a little bit more. There we go. So you can see how all these features kind of play together to really help us create a design of a roof. Once we actually created this entire design, and we'll just show kind of briefly how this would work. Sorry. There we go. Well, what we can do is we can group this entire entity, group it, press on the handle group, and now say for example, the graph pad showing this dimension is 270, and we actually know that that dimension is quite a bit larger, say 300, or well, a bit larger, 270, and we want it to be precisely, I don't know, 354 and 4/8 or something like 54 feet. We'll just do it in round numbers. If we tab out of that, this is the factor that it would have to increase in order to be the proper size. If we do an update, we'll now see that the drawing is now scaled. So kind of take our point and slide it down. Now we can also change this page to being opaque so it's a little easier to work with. Close that out, now we can actually see it. And we'll just go ahead and change this dimension so I can see that number a little bit better, change it back to black. And then we'd actually go and select each one of these lines. Oops, what am I doing here? Select each one of these lines and turn them to the proper color. Change those to black as well.